welcome back to MANCINIMA, to another Halloween special. Today what we're going to be looking at is some of my personal memories of watching horror movies in strange situations and strange locations. But before we get into that, can I ask you a favour? Could you please hit the like button? Even if you don't like this video afterwards, you can unlike it. But if you can like it for the moment, just so you don't forget at the other end, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to this channel. There'll be more of these videos, more of the other videos that you may like. Maybe you like some of my dinosaur videos, maybe you like some of my travelling or collecting videos. There'll be more of those to come. And please hit the notification bell and then you'll know when I've done some more of those. That'll be absolutely great. So let's get into it. What I'm going to be talking about today is, as I said, some of my memories of watching movies in bizarre situations. So let's start right back at the very start. What got me into horror movies? Now, I did see Jaws. I think I was 7 years old, because I think Jaws opened in 1975, but opened in the UK I think in 1976. So I would have been about 7 years old when I saw Jaws on the big screen, but back then I didn't take it as a horror movie. It was just a movie about a big fish and the hunt for a big fish, so I didn't really see that as a horror movie. I know it's been adopted into the horror genre since then, but back in those days I didn't really see Jaws as a horror movie. So we're going to put Jaws to one side for the moment, because the movie that I'm talking about that really dragged me into the horror movie genre, if you like, was Frankenstein, James Whale's Frankenstein. Now, I saw this on television back, I think around it would have been the late 1970s, so probably about 77, 78, somewhere around then. And I think they may have shown Dracula beforehand, but the reason I didn't watch Dracula and I watched Frankenstein is due to my nan. So the way that things used to work out is we weren't not allowed to watch horror films when we were kids, but my nan, my lovely nan, was a huge horror movie and horror book fan. And what she would do is when everybody else went to bed, she would come and wake me up quietly, and she'd sneak me downstairs and we'd sit there and we'd watch the horror movies together, because she used to love to watch horror movies. So I missed Dracula on that occasion, but I did see the later one, which was Frankenstein, which was screened as part of the BBC Two's horror double bill. I don't know how many of you guys remember that, but the BBC used to show, I think it was on a Saturday night back around the 70s, 80s, a horror double bill. So you'd get maybe one or maybe two Universal monster classics, and then one week you get a Universal versus an Amicus plus a or maybe a Hammer and a Universal or something like that. So generally be like a black and white movie along with a colour movie. So yeah, the first time that I saw my first proper horror movie was Frankenstein, and I just remember absolutely loving the character of Boris Karloff and the way that he moved, and of course I'd seen him in a few kind of cartoons in the past as well, so I kind of instantly recognised what the character looked like. But yeah, Frankenstein was my introduction to horror movies, and I'll always be thankful to my nan for introducing me to horror movies in that way. So as I got a little bit older, we were taken on a family holiday in 1981. Now, just before this, I'd had an accident. I was bitten by my family dog, and I had a skin graft over this part of my eye. So a great big white pad over this side of my eye, which obscured my vision, meant I couldn't go in the swimming pool, couldn't go out to other things I were planning to do, and it pretty much ruined the holiday for me because I was that restricted. And it was literally like about a week, 2 weeks before I was due to start my middle school, my junior, even senior school actually. So that was a pretty miserable time. We went on a family holiday, like I said. We went to Devon. It was a caravan park. There wasn't a whole lot going on for kids, apart from the swimming pool. And in the evenings, the grandparents and the parents would go into the local pub and they'd spend the evening in the pub. Of course, us kids, we weren't allowed in the pub. So what they had is they had this little room out the back of the pub, a little white room. Do you remember those rooms that are painted white, but over the years they get covered in cobwebs and dust and muck and leaves and stuff like that, and they just look really grubby. Where they used to be white, now they've kind of gone off colour and it just looks like a bloody mess. It was one of those rooms. In this room you had, I think you had a pinball machine, you certainly had a fridge with a small portable television on the top, and it was covered in cobwebs. There were crane flies everywhere. There were, like, you know when you get those little cocoons of spiders up in the corners, that kind of thing. It was like that. And there was an open door where everything just blew in, and if you looked out at the open door you could see like a couple of patches of grass, and then it just went off into nothingness, blackness. There wasn't even a car park there was no lighting, it was just black, absolutely black. And anyway, I'm sat in this room, didn't want to play the game anymore, I was bored, and we turned the television on, and on that television that night, and I didn't know this at the time, was Salem's Lot, and it began, and I was absolutely locked into this programme. I was absolutely enthralled by it. Do you remember the little kid who came rapping up at the window, all creepy with his glowing eyes, Jeffrey Lewis with the glowing eyes in the rocking chair, and of course, best of all, the big old vampire, Barlow, who looked like Nosferatu with his blue skin and yellow eyes. He was really nasty. So it was real nightmare fuel. Of course, every time we were watching this program, all I could see was like a spider dropping down to the left of me. And then over on this side, you were looking out into the darkness thinking, what the hell is that coming towards me out of the darkness? It was really, really creepy, but it was the absolute best way to watch Salem's Lot. And I had to beg the family to go back the following night to watch part 2 because they showed it in 2 parts. I think it was released in the cinema in some places as a kind of an edited movie, but when it was on television they showed the elongated version. It's a little bit flabby in places. There's places where it could do with cutting a bit of the fat out so it can move the story on. But overall it's a really good, really kind of chilling, even to this day, vampire movie. It's one of the best vampire movies actually. So Salem's Lot in that environment was a fantastic way to watch that programme. A little bit older again, once I was in the senior school, if you like, we had an AV, you know, one of those audio video things that they used to wheel out on a trolley. We'd have the television set up here and the VHS down there, and they'd show you all those educational programs they recorded like in the middle of the night before. So they had one of those, and my friend's dad had a video membership card. Remember we used to get those little video membership cards? Those were the days, eh? So we went round to the video store. Now back in those days, this is before Mary Whitehouse and her army came along, you could rent whatever the hell you wanted. So we went out and we rented The Exorcist. We'd heard that The Exorcist was a really scary film. My friend, I remember saying, oh, Friday the 13th was the scariest film I've ever seen. And then I said, well, hang on a minute, I've heard about this film called The Exorcist. Even my mum was scared of The Exorcist. So let's go and rent that. So we did it, and we rented it. We came back into the school, somehow got into the AV kind of room, put this television set on, put the VHS in, and we sat and watched it. And it was boring. You know, all those scenes at the beginning where they're doing the excavation and the talk with Damien and his mother, and just all the set scenes in New York with a woman doing the movie and stuff like that. It was so boring. We wondered what the hell this was about. And of course, we didn't really watch it through to the ends, because all the good stuff is at the other end. And we sat and watched probably about an hour, half an hour of this thing, and nothing really was going on. We thought it was one of the most boring films we'd ever seen. So we only had a limited amount of time as well because the school bell rang. We had to get back in our classes. But I eventually saw it, I think, possibly about 7 years after that, because I used to actually work in a video club. So I rented it and I took it round to I didn't rent it, I worked in the video club, I could get it for free. So I borrowed it, and we went round to my mate's house and we sat and watched it together there, and watched through all the bit with the excavation at the beginning, and then it does get obviously very good at the end. And of course now it's a classic. I absolutely love it. It's a classic movie nowadays. It's one of the best horror movies ever made. After the incident with The Exorcist, I wanted to go and see my first cinematic horror movie. Now, the first movie that I did see at the cinema was Friday the 13th Part 5. I did try for Part 4 the previous year because it was called The Final Chapter, and I thought, well, this is the end for Jason, so if I don't see him at the cinema now, I'm not going to get to see him at the cinema. And we didn't know there was going to be a Part 5 at that stage, so I went to the cinema, my local cinema, which was the ABC, and I went up and I put this deep voice on and said, yeah, 1 ticket for Friday the 13th, the final chapter, please. And the woman looked up from wherever it was she was reading, looked me in the eye, and she goes, yeah, you're not coming in. So I didn't get to see Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I was actually very young. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I certainly wasn't old enough to go and see that film. I think I was probably about 15, so I wasn't old enough to see an 18 certificate film, and I really didn't pass. So the following year came around and we had this immediate Friday the 13th Part 5. I thought, where the hell did that come from? I thought it was the final chapter, the last one. Anyway, happy for another Friday the 13th film. Didn't know what the hell it was about. And I thought, right, I'm going to try for this one. I really want to go and see this Friday the 13th film at the cinema. It became something of a mission for me. So I went up to the cinema kiosk again, put on the deep voice, and yeah, 1 for Friday the 13th Part 5, please. And without looking up, they just punched me the ticket and gave it to me. And I stood there, I had this ticket in my hand, and I was like, I've got a ticket for Friday the 13th Part 5. So very quickly I put my head down, I wandered past the other person, the person who tears the tickets. I wandered past them, gave them the ticket, they teared the ticket, they were too busy drinking their cup of tea and reading the local newspaper. And I snuck in, I went into the screen, I think it was screen 3, because they had 2 screens downstairs. You had screen 2, I think, on the left, and screen 3 on the right, but it might have been the other way around. But anyway, I snuck into that screen. Got my seat, and I sat down right in the middle, because I used to, I don't like to do it nowadays. Nowadays I like to have an arm seat, but back in the day, the cinemas weren't so busy. I used to like to sit right in the centre of the screen to get the full cinematic experience. So there was me on my own in the screen, in the dark. This screen was very dark anyway, even with the lights up it was dark. The kind of places where you can't see into the shadows. And I'm sat in the middle of the screen, And I can hear people coming in behind me, sniffing and kind of coughing and shuffling around in their bags, but I couldn't see them. I mean, they wouldn't come and sit in front of me, they wouldn't come and sit beside me, everybody was sitting behind me. And it really freaked me out for some reason. I was thinking, here I am, I was, I can't even remember how old I was, but I was certainly beneath age. I was probably about 16 or something like that, sitting here watching this 18 certificate film with these older people coming in behind me who are shuffling around, not talking, they're just making noises. And it really freaked me out for the majority of the film. I remember sitting there in that cinema just being so unnerved by having these strange people all around me. I took my friend to see Chuck Russell's 1988 version of The Blob, which was obviously the remake of the Steve McQueen movie. Now, by this time, one of my friends was an usher there, and he and I used to like to play pranks and things like that. And I said to him, I said, can you do something for me? He says, what? So I gave him a bag of wine gums. I said, can you boil those down and then just let them dry off a bit until they become a bit like a gelatinous kind of blob? You know where I'm going? He said, yeah. He said, I can do that. I said, all right, well, bring it back to me in a minute. I basically had to pretend to go out and get something from the kiosk, and then I came back in. So I spoke to my mate outside about this. Gave him the wine gums, and he went off to do that. So I said, when I give you the nod, I said, just come down, sneak in behind, and dribble it down behind my other mate's neck. So yeah, he did that. We got into the movie, and at one moment when the blob was everywhere and it was like dripping from the ceiling and stuff like that, I gave my mate the nod, and he kind of came down and he dribbled it down the back of my other friend's neck, and my friend turned around and he screamed so loud. It was so funny. The whole cinema kind of turned around and looked at us. Me and my usher mate were in fits of laughter. He was terrified. And there was a few tuts from people in the cinema going, oh, what the hell are they up to, you know, kind of thing. But we had a really good laugh, really did enjoy that. So that was The Blob, that was a funny experience as well. Yeah, moving on from The Blob, I guess what I'd like to talk about next is my first experience of seeing the movie Halloween at the cinema. Now, I'd seen Halloween on VHS cassette since 1981, and I didn't actually get to see it on the big screen until 2003 when I went out to Pasadena. We went out to the Halloween 25 Years of Terror convention, and they took us around all the filming locations, and one of the treats that night was to watch Halloween in Pasadena on the big screen. So I thought, great, yeah, I'm going to see Halloween on the big screen at long last. It's taken me this long to see this movie. I've seen it on all the other formats anyway, you know, at home, but I've never seen it at the cinema screen because it didn't get a regular cinema release then. And I was so excited. So we went to Pasadena, parked up our car, told the location, walked around the corners of the location, and it kind of struck me in the face. I thought, wait a minute, I know this place. I'm looking up, and it's one of these really old-fashioned cinemas. I thought, no, it can't be. So I went up and spoke to the tour guide. I said, is this the cinema they used at the beginning of Scream 2 for Stab? He said, yeah, it is. I said, oh my God. So we were watching Halloween. Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm not sure that the interior for Scream 2 was shot in that cinema. I don't know that for a fact at all. I don't know that. But I do know the exterior was shot for Scream 2. It's where they had the movie premiere for Stab. So certainly we were in the location where they shot part of Scream 2, where I watched Halloween. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And another odd thing about that as well, we were sat in the screen watching Halloween, and because we were all Halloween fans, there was a number of people who sat around with Michael Myers masks on in the audience and didn't take them off the entire movie. They sat there and watched the entire movie with these Michael Myers masks on. So, yeah, that's a little bit odd. So there you go. There's some of my weird, if you like, horror movie viewing experiences and situations. I hope you've enjoyed some of my stories, some of my little strange stories. I'm sure there's a couple of others somewhere if I remember them. If I do, I'll make another video. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the notification bell. And please come and talk to me in the comments and tell me if you've had any bizarre incidents of watching horror movies, why you've watched them and what might have happened. I'm always interested to hear other people's stories, so pop it down in the comments. Let me know if you've had any experiences watching a horror movie in a bizarre, strange situation. And please come back to the channel. We'll be doing more non-horror movie reviews soon because the Halloween season has come to a close, so we'll be looking at the other movies that are on at the cinema coming up between now and obviously the end of December and beyond that. And yeah, we've got some more dinosaur videos, some more collecting videos to come. So yeah, please pop back and see us on this channel. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my stories, and I'll speak to you all soon. Take care.